Nowadays, if you're not playing video games like Fortnite or something, you're basically a loser. But back in the day, that was not the case. If you went to school and told your friends that you had been playing some video games, they'd probably like dunk you in the toilet or something. But for me, I would say it was even more awkward because I grew up in this transitionary period where it was not cool to talk about video games, but basically everybody was playing them. Like you'd go to school and you'd be like, yo, have you played the new James Bond video game? It's crazy. And then they'd be like, what are you, a nerd? And then they would go home and they would play the same James Bond video game because everybody had it. But when Lord of the Rings Return of the King came out, there was a massive change. Suddenly, not only was it cool to talk about this video game at school, but other kids were just inviting tons of kids over to have these massive Return of the King parties where one person got to be Aragorn and the other guy had to be Pippin because he was peer pressured into it or something.
Let us together rebuild this world, that we may share in the days of peace.
And because of that fact, I have a lot of nostalgia for that video game, to the extent that I consider it probably my favorite PS2 game of all time. But I've been wondering, how much of my love for that game is just predicated on the fact that I got to play it with my childhood bullies? Well, today, we are going to find out, because we're going to take a look back at the Return of the King video game and see how good it really was. The one game to rule them all. But alas, I do not know if I can bear this burden on my own. My dear Frodo Baggins, you are not alone. Gandalf! Yes, this time I will be with you. And Merry and Sam too. And you have my sword! Faramir, what on earth are you doing here? You wish now that our places had been exchanged. That I had died and Boromir had lived. Yes, I wish that. Since you were robbed of Boromir, I will go— shut the fuck up, Faramir. Now, you may well know that about a year ago, I did a video on the Two Towers video game, which, quite frankly, I felt was really good and still really held up. Obviously, there was a bit of jank with it, but it is, you know, a game from the PS2. And going into this, I expected the Return of the King would probably be at least on par, if not significantly better, than that game. And I gotta say, I'm not sure if that's entirely true. There certainly are some major improvements. I think the combat itself feels a little bit more balanced and less broken. For example, one of the most broken things you could do in the Two Towers was get knocked over and then do the stand-up attack, which just automatically knocks over everybody around you onto the ground, and then you just do an insta-kill on them. But in the Return of the King game, they clearly recognized that as a bit of a broken problem, but instead of just nerfing it, they went like so far beyond or to the point that it's basically detrimental to try and use that attack. The stand-up attack is so slow that literally any enemy has a chance of hitting you before you hit them, which just knocks you over, and if you keep trying to do it on accident, like myself, because you're just conditioned in your brain, you just get locked into this stun lock that is just an insta-lose. So that ability sucks now. But the combat itself does feel a little bit more fair and a little bit more balanced when it comes to every enemy. There wasn't ever a situation where I felt like I needed something broken, like the fall down stand-up attack in order to win. But there is still the problem of the combos themselves feeling almost pointless because you never really are able to get a combo off. Before you can actually do anything, you just end up having your combo broken and then you have to start over again, so it's easier just to spam the X or triangle button over and over again. However, I think where the Return of the King game falls down significantly compared to Two Towers is the level design. Now, I remember the level design as being pretty spectacular and pretty intricate, but going back into this, I was clearly mistaken. Most of the levels are surprisingly short, and the ones that are longer are just very repetitive. Two Towers did, of course, have some small levels, but the gameplay usually evolved and changed as you were playing. That doesn't happen here. Also, they still included all the, like, breakable barrels, but they seemingly forgot that there's supposed to be stuff in it. There isn't a single barrel in this game that has anything in it. Like, what? Why? What's the point of the barrel? With that said, though, Return of the King has the best level out of both of the games, which is the Minas Tirith Castle Wall level. That one, they just took what made Helm's Deep so fantastic from the Two Towers game and just amped it up to 11. It is so fun. But most of the other levels are honestly either forgettable or blatantly just not fun. The one with the spiders, even if you don't have arachnophobia is just painful to play, and the bosses themselves feel more repetitive and annoying than ever. I do have to say though, I really did struggle with the very first boss, the Lich King dude, and I've done some thinking about it, and I've come to the conclusion that it's because I'm just too good of a gamer. You know, like, I'm so used to like hardcore games like Elden Ring and Neo 2 that something as simple as just parry for a little bit and then attack was just beneath me. You know, so that's the real problem. I'm not bad at video games. You better not write that in the comments. After that though, every boss started to feel significantly easy because I realized that they're all mostly the same. Except for this guy that Sam fights, which you just run away from him and then you throw a stick at him and eventually he dies. Oh, nice, good. Just fun, that's gameplay. Now, there is one big improvement, of course. I know what we're all thinking, and that is, finally, you can play as the entire Fellowship. I mean, you can play as Frodo and Sam, and then eventually unlock Pippin and Merry, which is fantastic. And finally, you can play as Gandalf. Now, apparently Gandalf was actually supposed to be a secret character in the Two Towers game, but I guess he was cut out at some point in development. I don't know if it was late or early, but he wasn't in that game. I don't know if you noticed. But there is one more secret character we can unlock, and that is Faramir. But why? I'm gonna be honest, I take great offense to this. Why the fuck is Faramir one of the secret characters? Faramir sucks. Of all the characters they could have had as an additional secret character, they picked Faramir, why? I think, quite frankly, there is a very obvious character who should have been the secret character. And if that character isn't obvious too, then I'm sorry, but you may be just a little bit possibly misogynistic. And that obvious character is, why the fuck isn't Eowyn the character? I realize that Faramir is just a reskinned Aragorn, but they could have done that with Eowyn. I mean, sure, Eowyn has a shield for like 2 seconds in the Return of the King, but dude, she doesn't need to just get rid of it. Give her a slightly longer sword, she can have a bow, I don't give a shit. Why the fuck is Eowyn not the character? It's stupid. And yes, I do realize that this was before the year to 2020, when game developers were convinced that women don't play video games and no man would be okay with a girl existing. But it's still stupid. It's a coward's move. It's bullshit. But now I know what you're asking. But Mason, what about the co-op? That's the major improvement. The Two Towers video game didn't have co-op for some weird reason. I mean, probably because they didn't have time to develop it, or they just assumed that Lord of the Rings fans don't have friends. I don't know. But finally, we had 2-player co-op, and my answer to you is, I didn't play co-op because I only have one PS2 controller. I mean, sure, I could have easily got a second one, but I didn't, did I? No. So if you're looking for a great Lord of the Rings game that's just fun to play and captures the magic of the Lord of the Rings itself, I definitely recommend playing the Two Towers instead. But if you're looking for a game that's great to play with a second person, maybe that's this one. Or maybe you should play War in the North instead. Is that one co-op? I don't even know. Also, I just have one last thing to say, and that is, how the fuck did I miss Treebeard in the Two Towers game? Just standing in the back there like some kind of horror villain? Legolas comes in and he's like, Aragorn, I sense something out there. It's like, yeah, no shit, Legolas, he's behind you with a knife. He's gonna kill you. I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. There's a link in the description, probably. I've literally never plugged Twitter, so I guess I'm doing it now. Goodbye. The return of the king has failed. But Gandalf, that game was our only hope. No. There is another.